and welcome back to my channel. My name is Keiko. I'm a mixed media artist and watercolor paint maker based in Hawaii. In my latest YouTube community poll, you guys voted for a video about limited color palettes, which, as you know if you've been around my social media for a while, is one of my favorite topics to talk about. First, we'll look at why you want to choose a limited color palette. Then I'll share my favorite tips about how to choose your limited color palette that fits you and or the project you're currently working on. I'll also show you my favorite mini palette with Indian yellow, opera pink, phthalo turquoise, and indigo and what you can do with it. This video focuses on watercolor, but naturally you can apply all the tips that I give you today to other media as well. Okay, let's dive right in. Why would anybody want to paint with just 3 colors, for example, the 3 classic primary colors, when there are so many pre-made colors available and out there? First of all, the learning factor. Having just a few colors at your disposal will teach you about color mixing and color harmony. When I rediscovered my love for painting 7 years ago, I worked with a limited color palette from the get-go, and it made me understand how colors work together and how to mix colors. And as a side note, it also helped me with my bread and butter job of creating colors, palettes, and sets for my Aloha Watercolors paint making business. Even outside of painting, think interior design, clothing, making greeting cards, designing a website. Knowledge about colors always comes in handy. 2. Color harmony. A limited color palette will lead to a more balanced painting. Let's say you use a classic primary set of red, yellow, and blue, and you mix your orange, greens, and neutrals from that. These greens, oranges, and neutrals will automatically go well with each other as they all stem from the same 3 colors. So you could paint a whole series of artwork with different subject matters, but using the same colors and their mixes will unify the series and create harmony and cohesiveness. And even if you don't mix your colors and you take the colors right and straight from the palette that you picked, your series of artworks will still look unified color-wise. 3. Simplify your decision-making process. Especially for challenges like a 30-day challenge, I love having my color palette set and ready to go so that every day I can just reach for my toolbox with all my supplies and colors right there. No more pondering which colors to choose. That job's already done and I can get started with painting. If you want to know more about how to set up a daily art challenge, check out my video from last week, and I put a card up here so you can have a look if you like. I do want to say at this point that I know that it can be challenging and frustrating to mix all the colors all the time. So let's say you have a 3 color limited palette, very small palette, and you really like this mossy green that you mixed, but you have a hard time recreating it. In that case, I can recommend either you make a whole huge puddle of that color, you can let it dry on the palette, you can reactivate it, or if you find that color in a store somewhere, a convenience color, pre-mixed color like that, then just go ahead and add it to your palette if you know that you're gonna use this color a lot and it keeps you from sitting down and painting daily. And I did that myself back in May in my 30-day mixed media challenge. This was my palette. I based it on 3 colors, the yellow and the blue, and then instead of red I chose a magenta. This is opera pink, and I added, for example, this avocado green, even though I could have easily mixed that with yellow and blue. But I'd say, especially when you're traveling and you know that you only have a limited amount of time, and in this case also because this was a mixed media challenge and I also added, crayons and colored pencils and all different types of media, it was good to have a few convenience color added to the very basic 3 color palette. To recap, why choose a limited color palette? You'll practice your mixing skills and will learn which colors work best to explore your creative voice. For more balance and cohesiveness in your painting, to make it easier to get started with your daily art session. Now that we've looked at why to choose a limited color palette, let's look at how to choose one. When it comes to choosing a limited color palette, there's no wrong or right or not just one method, but there are a few good ones to try out when you don't know where to begin. 1. Let's start with a more general idea of what you like. Are you drawn to calm and cool scenes, not just in art but in general? Like looking at the ocean or a serene lake and forest gives you all the good vibes? Or maybe you love all the bright colors, you even love wearing them. Or you feel more drawn to muted and warm colors in the yellow and peach range. Or you're wild and just love to mix it all up. Cool blue colors in the background and then something really punchy neon pink in the foreground maybe. Understanding what you feel drawn to might make your decision on what to paint easier or where to take your art in the future. You might already know what you love to paint and how to paint it. Is it animals, portraits, landscapes, or do you love sweet, more simple illustrations? Maybe children's books illustrations, or maybe you're a pattern designer. Do you like to paint more realistically, or do you like to stylize your art, or maybe even paint abstract? The combination of finding out about your favorite colors and also knowing or feeling out what you like to draw might make it a lot easier for you to find your favorite and go-to color palettes. 2. Let's get a bit more specific. Okay, let's say you love cool blues and greens and you would like to paint ocean scenes. Or you love bright and vibrant colors and you decide to do a 30-day challenge and paint tropical flowers. Next step, you can choose some reference photos and pick some nice blues and greens for the ocean and some vibrant reds and yellows and pinks and greens for the tropical flowers. You can use the free tool Adobe Color to upload the photo and have the app pick a color palette right from that photo. You can change the colors by moving the little round swatches here around the photo. You can move the swatches down here and even choose from different modes here in the left panel, from colorful, bright to muted, deep, and dark. This Adobe site is free to use. However, the free version doesn't let you save your palette. So I recommend that you take a screenshot before you start uploading your next photo and choosing another color palette. 3. Another interesting way to explore what colors you like is to open up a magazine and mark the spots or even cut out a few swatches that you like intuitively. Then lay them out in front of you and start combining them until they feel right. You can create a mini color mood board like this on Pinterest too. Coming back to oceans or tropical flowers, you can peruse the magazine with this idea in mind, of course. So you can try and find blues and greens for the ocean and bright and fun colors for the flowers. But you can keep it more spontaneous too, especially if you don't have a certain theme in mind and maybe just want to paint something abstract or just have a good time and play around with some colors. 4. Naturally, you can find color inspiration all around you, not just in Pinterest or in magazines. If you love flowers and you see a flower that really speaks to you, then take a photo and extract a color palette in Adobe Color. I have this method, or I learned this method from the one and only Bonnie Christine, a surface pattern designer. She shares so much of her knowledge and I will link her website down in the description below. She says that you can always rely on nature to come up with the most wonderful and cohesive color palettes. And she recommends that you choose a few saturated colors as well as a couple of neutrals, dark and light. 5. If you've never worked with a limited color palette before and want to learn how to mix colors from scratch, you can start with the classic primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. Or with a more modern variety of that palette, the printing industry standard of cyan, magenta, and yellow. Most of the big watercolor companies and also a lot of handmade watercolor paint makers offer basic color sets with both cool and warm primaries that let you mix a whole rainbow of colors. If you're completely new to color mixing, you might never have heard of the term warm or cool colors, and that actually could be a whole big video in itself about color theory and warm and cool colors, but very generally speaking, and in a nutshell, we perceive blue, green, and purple as cool colors, and yellow, orange, and reds as warm colors. But even these colors might lean towards the other side. So let's say you have a blue that has a reddish hue, like ultramarine blue, for example, then that would be considered a warm blue. Or naturally, if you have a purple that has lots of red in it, that would be considered more warm than a purple that has a lot of blue in it. Or a green with lots of yellow would also be perceived as a warm green. There's a whole science on how to mix cool and warm primaries to create more muted or vibrant oranges, purples, and greens. As I said, it could be a whole video in itself. And the reason I'm mentioning these here at all is that they are extremely versatile. You can mix so many colors with just a primary color palette. For me personally, I hardly ever use red. I usually go for a pink, magenta, or my favorite, opera pink. But I do stay close to the idea of primaries. It's just that I change it up a little bit, and I'm gonna talk about that in my next point. 6. My method. What I usually do is I choose colors that are close to the primary color palette, but not quite, and then I add 2 more colors in a more neutral range, usually a light and a dark one. I start building my palette with one color, the hero color, in this case it's opera pink. Opera pink on the color wheel would be somewhere between red and purple. Following the model of the primary colors arranged in a triangle, or also known as a triad, I then substitute the blue for a phthalo turquoise and the yellow with an Indian yellow. I could work with just these 3 colors and create beautiful mixes. These swatches here show a few examples of oranges, purples, and neutrals you can mix with just these 3. As I will be using this palette for my upcoming mixed media challenge over on my Instagram account, I want to add another type of blue to the palette to make it a bit more versatile. The challenge's theme is ocean vibes, so indigo feels like a very good color to add to the mix. So a very dark color which will allow me to create darker values of all my chosen colors for this palette. As a side note, when you work with watercolor, you can utilize the white of the paper to create even more variations of color saturation. For example, you can water down this phthalo turquoise to a very faded looking light blue. For my own palette creation, I consider my love for bright colors, but I also look at the things that I want to paint with that palette. So having ocean vibes as the theme of the challenge, with prompts ranging from ocean animals, surfing, to ocean landscapes, I wanted to have a very versatile color palette that lets me mix all sorts of colors, and then I added indigo as a convenience color. I might actually end up adding another blue, maybe something like ultramarine blue, because ultramarine blue is a very granulating color. It's also great for mixing. And the other 4 colors I've already chosen for the palette are all very transparent and non-granulating. So I think it would be interesting to have a granulating blue in that mix as well. I personally love granulating colors. To recap: 1. Ask yourself what you like, not just in art, but in general. 2. Choose a theme and pick colors from reference photos. 3. Find inspiration in magazines or on Pinterest and create a color mood board. 4. Find inspiration all around you. Take photos and extract a color palette. 5. Experiment with the classic 3 primary color palette. 6. Start with the hero color, then build up your palette according to theme, taste, and personal preferences. I hope you find this video encouraging to try out a limited color palette, play with it for a while, maybe for a month, and see where it takes you and what you can learn from it. If you want to join me for the upcoming Mixed Media Challenge, hop over to my Instagram, The Aloha Studios, or check out the description below. I'll link everything down there. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and leave a little comment down below. I'll see you again next Sunday for my next video, and until then, happy creating and aloha!